Threads of Time by Edwina Longbottom. Chapter 1, The Discovery. In the heart of London, tucked between bustling cafes and towering edifices, stood an unassuming library with weathered stone walls and arched windows streaked with grime. Its modest appearance belied the treasure trove of knowledge it housed, a sanctuary for the curious and the scholarly alike. This library was where Dr. Amelia Trent, an esteemed historian with a penchant for unraveling the mysteries of the past, spent most of her days. Amelia was no ordinary academic. She possessed a rare combination of sharp intellect and boundless curiosity, her focus often drawn to the obscure and forgotten corners of history. Her office, an organized chaos of leather-bound tomes and yellowed manuscripts, reflected her tireless pursuit of knowledge. She found solace in the scent of aged paper and the gentle rustle of turning pages, often losing her for hours within the echoes of ancient voices. One particularly dreary afternoon, Amelia was deep within the labyrinthine stacks of the library, combing through documents related to medieval alchemy. A sudden draft caused a nearby book to fall from its perch, landing with a dull thud at her feet. Intrigued, she bent to retrieve it and noticed something unusual. Tucked within the spine of the seemingly mundane volume was a hidden manuscript, its delicate parchment inscribed with symbols and codes that defied immediate comprehension. Her heart quickened as she carried the discovery to her reading table. Under the dim glow of the desk lamp, Amelia carefully unfolded the manuscript. The intricate symbols seemed to dance on the page, and as she deciphered them, a story began to emerge, a story that hinted at a legendary artifact known as the Chronomancer's compass. According to the manuscript, the compass was forged by a forgotten civilization to maintain the delicate balance of time and nature. Amelia's fingers trembled as she read further. The upcoming solar eclipse marked a critical moment. If the compass's pieces were not reunited by then, an ancient catastrophe would awaken, unraveling the natural order and plunging the world into chaos. The weight of the revelation pressed heavily upon her. Amelia's mind raced with questions. Who created this artifact? Why was its history buried? And most pressing of all, where were its scattered fragments? Driven by a profound sense of duty, she resolved to uncover the truth and protect the world from the impending calamity. Yet she knew she could not do it alone. That evening, as she walked home beneath a sky streaked with amber and indigo, Amelia made a decision that would change the course of her life. She would seek help, not from her academic peers, whose skepticism would only hinder her progress, but from someone whose expertise lay beyond the confines of scholarly study. Someone who thrived in the shadows of history, a treasure hunter. Little did she know that her search would lead her to Lucas Blackwood, a man whose reputation preceded him as a seeker of artifacts, a rogue with a charm as sharp as his instincts. Their paths were about to collide, setting the stage for a partnership forged in the crucible of danger and discovery. As the city lights flickered to life and the world continued its unknowing march toward chaos, Amelia resolved to follow the manuscript's clues, unaware of the trials and secrets that lay ahead. The Chronomancer's compass awaited, and so too did the fate of the world. Chapter 2, An Unlikely Partnership. Lucas Blackwood was a name spoken in both awe and caution across the circles of treasure hunters, collectors, and academics. Known for his sharp intellect and sharper wit, Lucas had a knack for finding what others could not, whether it be an ancient relic or a way out of trouble. Standing at just over 6 feet, with dark, unruly hair and piercing green eyes, he carried an air of quiet confidence that could disarm even the most guarded skeptic. His reputation had been built on a lifetime of near-impossible discoveries, artifacts thought lost to history, recovered from places no one dared to tread. Yet his success was often tempered by whispers of reckless gambles and questionable methods. Lucas thrived on the thrill of the hunt, the dance between risk and reward, but beneath his roguish exterior lay a man haunted by past choices. Amelia Trent and Lucas Blackwood first crossed paths on a gray morning in a dimly lit corner of the library. Amelia had summoned him through a mutual acquaintance, though she hadn't expected him to respond so quickly, or at all. When he arrived, she was immediately struck by the contrast he presented. Dressed in a leather jacket and scuffed boots, Lucas looked entirely out of place amidst the library's scholarly austerity. Yet, as his gaze swept the room, he exuded an ease that suggested he belonged anywhere he chose to be. "I've heard of you, Dr. Trent," Lucas began, his voice smooth with a hint of amusement. "The brilliant historian who guards the past like a dragon guards its hoard." Amelia raised an eyebrow, unfazed by his charm. "And you must be Lucas Blackwood, the treasure hunter who treats history like a game." Lucas chuckled, taking a seat across from her. "Touché, but I suspect you didn't call me here to discuss reputations." Amelia slid the manuscript across the table, watching his expression shift as he studied its contents. His playful demeanor gave way to something sharper, more focused. "This is no ordinary legend," he murmured, tracing the symbols with a calloused finger. "The Chronomancer's compass. I've been chasing fragments of this artifact for years, but these codes," he shook his head, "I've never seen anything like them." "That's because they've been hidden," Amelia replied. "This manuscript contains the key to locating the remaining fragments, but the task is monumental. I need someone with your expertise." Lucas leaned back, a slow grin spreading across his face. "So, the dragon needs the rogue. How poetic." "Don't flatter yourself," Amelia retorted, though a faint smile betrayed her amusement. "This is about saving the world, not stroking your ego." Despite their initial sparring, an understanding began to form between them. Amelia brought a wealth of knowledge and an uncanny ability to decipher ancient codes, while Lucas offered a lifetime of experience navigating perilous terrains and outsmarting adversaries. Their combined skills made them a formidable team, though trust would not come easily. Before the day was out, they had devised a plan. The manuscript pointed to several locations across the globe, each tied to a fragment of the compass. Their first destination would be the ancient ruins of Mesopotamia, where Amelia believed the first piece lay hidden. As they left the library together, their partnership felt tenuous, a balance of mutual need and cautious curiosity. Amelia was acutely aware of Lucas's reputation and the shadowy motives that might lurk beneath his charm. Lucas, for his part, admired Amelia's intellect, but wondered if her idealism could withstand the harsh realities of their quest. Neither could predict the trials ahead or the bond that would form between them as they ventured into the unknown. For now, they were two unlikely allies, bound by a shared purpose and the enigmatic pull of the Chronomancer's compass. Chapter 3: The First Clue. The relentless sun blazed down on the ancient ruins of Mesopotamia, where Amelia and Lucas began their search for the first fragment of the Chronomancer's compass. The air shimmered with heat, and the desert stretched endlessly around them, its golden sands a stark contrast to the shadowed corners of the crumbling temple that stood before them. Amelia wiped the sweat from her brow and adjusted her wide-brimmed hat, her gaze fixed on the intricate carvings adorning the temple's entrance. "This is it," she murmured, her voice filled with awe. "The Temple of Aru. The manuscript described this place perfectly." Lucas crouched beside her, examining the faint symbols etched into the stone. The ancients didn't make it easy, did they? Hidden mechanisms, coded messages. They were paranoid. They had reason to be. Amelia replied, her tone sharp. "The compass wasn't just a tool. It was a safeguard against chaos. If it fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would be catastrophic." Lucas cast her a sidelong glance, smirking. "And here I thought you historians were all about dusty books and tea. You've got a bit of fire in you, Dr. Trent." Amelia ignored the remark, focusing instead on the challenge ahead. The manuscript had hinted that the fragment was buried deep within the temple, protected by a series of puzzles designed to deter would-be thieves. For centuries, these defenses had held strong, but Amelia and Lucas were determined to succeed where others had failed. The first puzzle greeted them just inside the temple, a vast mural depicting celestial constellations. Beneath it lay a grid of stone tiles, each inscribed with a star symbol. Amelia knelt to inspect the arrangement, her mind already piecing together the solution. "The manuscript mentioned the stars," she mused aloud. "We need to align the tiles to match a specific constellation. Look for Orion's belt. It was a key motif in Mesopotamian mythology." Lucas nodded, his sharp eyes scanning the grid. "Got it. But if we're wrong, I'm guessing something unpleasant happens." "Most likely," Amelia said without hesitation. The ancients were known for their creative deterrents. Together, they worked to rearrange the tiles, their movements synchronized despite their vastly different backgrounds. Lucas's practicality balanced Amelia's meticulous precision, and within minutes the grid was complete. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber as the mural shifted, revealing a hidden passageway. "Not bad," Lucas said, offering Amelia a hand as they stepped through the opening. "You might make a decent treasure hunter yet. And you might make a passable historian," Amelia retorted, though a hint of a smile played on her lips. The passage led them deeper into the temple, where the air grew cooler and the light dimmer. Their flashlights cast dancing shadows on the walls, which were adorned with more carvings, this time depicting scenes of balance and harmony. At last, they reached the inner sanctum, a small, circular chamber dominated by a stone pedestal. Resting atop it was a fragment of the compass, gleaming faintly in the gloom. Amelia's breath caught as she stepped forward, her fingers itching to examine the artifact. But before she could touch it, Lucas's hand shot out to stop her. "Wait," he said, his tone serious. "Look at the floor." Amelia glanced down and saw the faint outlines of pressure plates surrounding the pedestal. She bit her lip, silently cursing her eagerness. "Booby traps?" "Most likely," Lucas said with a grin. "Let me handle this." With the agility of a cat, Lucas navigated the maze of pressure plates, his every step calculated and deliberate. Amelia watched, her heart pounding, until he finally reached the pedestal and retrieved the fragment. "Piece of cake," Lucas said, holding up the artifact as he made his way back to her. Amelia took the fragment from him, her hands trembling slightly. The metal was cool to the touch, and the intricate engravings seemed to pulse with an inner energy. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "This is only the beginning, but it feels monumental." Lucas's expression softened as he watched her. "You've got a knack for this, Amelia, but we've still got a long way to go." As they exited the temple, the sun dipping low on the horizon, a sense of triumph mingled with the knowledge that their journey was far from over. The first piece of the compass was theirs, but the challenges ahead would only grow more formidable. For now, though, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet celebration, the bond between them solidifying as they prepared for the next chapter of their quest. Chapter 4. Enclosed Secrets. The misty highlands of Scotland rolled out before them, a patchwork of emerald hills, silver streams, and brooding clouds that seemed to hang just within reach. Amelia shivered as a chill wind swept through the glen, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and pine. The contrast from the heat of Mesopotamia was striking, but the ancient beauty of the landscape was no less captivating. "This is where the second fragment is supposed to be?" Lucas asked, pulling his jacket tighter against the wind. "Feels more like the setting for a ghost story." "According to the manuscript, a druidic oracle once guarded the fragment," Amelia said, her voice hushed as she scanned the horizon. "The clues suggest it's hidden in a sacred grove somewhere near the standing stones." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Sacred grove, druids, standing stones. You really do know how to pick the mysterious ones, don't you?" Amelia ignored his teasing and focused on the task ahead. The highlands were vast and unforgiving, and every step felt like venturing further into a forgotten realm. The standing stones, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, loomed in the distance, their silent presence both awe-inspiring and foreboding. As they approached the site, the air seemed to grow heavier, as if the land itself was aware of their intrusion. The stones were inscribed with ancient runes, their meanings obscured by time. Amelia pulled out her notebook, cross-referencing the symbols with the manuscript's notes. "These runes describe the balance of the elements," she explained. "Earth, water, fire, and air. The druids believed in harmony, and their rituals reflected that. We'll need to decode the sequence to find the grove." Lucas crouched beside her, his gaze flicking between the stones and the surrounding landscape. "And if we get it wrong?" "Let's just not get it wrong," Amelia said, her tone leaving no room for debate. Together, they worked to interpret the runes, their breaths visible in the cold air. Lucas's practical mind complemented Amelia's academic expertise, and slowly the pattern began to emerge. With a final adjustment of one of the standing stones, a low hum resonated through the glen. The earth trembled, and a hidden path revealed itself, winding into the dense woods. "Well, that's not ominous," Lucas quipped, though his grip on the hilt of his knife tightened. The grove was unlike anything they had ever seen. Towering oaks formed a natural cathedral, their branches intertwined to create a canopy that filtered the sunlight into dappled green and gold. In the center stood a stone altar, its surface engraved with more runes, and standing before it as if summoned by the very land was the oracle. The figure was draped in emerald robes that shimmered like the leaves, their face obscured by a hood. Crystal-clear eyes, ancient and piercing, regarded them with an intensity that made even Lucas falter. "You seek the fragment," the oracle intoned, their voice resonating like the wind through the trees. "But only those who prove their worth may claim it." Amelia stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We're here to protect the compass, to prevent its power from falling into the wrong hands." The oracle inclined their head slightly, as if weighing her words. "Words alone are not enough. To prove your intentions, you must answer the riddles of the elements. Fail, and you shall not leave this grove." Lucas muttered under his breath, "Why is it always riddles?" The oracle's first riddle echoed through the grove. "I am born in stillness, yet can move mountains. I carve valleys, but hold no shape. What am I?" Amelia's mind raced, piecing together the clues. "Water," she said confidently. "It flows, carves valleys, and holds no permanent form." The oracle nodded, and the second riddle followed. "I am invisible, but can be felt. I give life, yet can destroy in an instant. What am I?" "Air," Amelia answered, her voice steady. The riddles continued, each testing their knowledge and intuition. Amelia and Lucas worked together, their minds aligning as they unraveled the oracle's challenges. Finally, with the last riddle solved, the oracle stepped aside, revealing the second fragment resting on the altar. Amelia approached with reverence, her fingers brushing against the cool metal. Like the first piece, it seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive with energy. She turned to Lucas, a triumphant smile lighting her face. But the moment was shattered by the sound of footsteps crunching through the underbrush. Cloaked figures emerged from the shadows, their faces obscured and their intentions clear. They were not here to safeguard the compass. They were here to claim it for themselves. Lucas drew his knife, positioning himself between Amelia and the intruders. "Looks like we've got company." Amelia clutched the fragment tightly, her mind racing for a way out. The grove, once serene, now felt like a trap, but even as fear clawed at her, she stood firm. The compass was too important to lose. "We'll face them together," she said, her voice steady despite the odds. Lucas glanced at her, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "Damn right we will." The grove erupted into chaos as the intruders closed in, the sacred space becoming a battlefield. Amelia and Lucas fought side by side, their partnership tested in the crucible of danger. And though the odds seemed insurmountable, they emerged victorious, the cloaked figures retreating into the mist. As the last of their attackers disappeared, Amelia and Lucas stood amidst the stillness, their breaths ragged but their resolve unshaken. The fragment was safe, and their journey would continue, but not without its scars. For the first time, Amelia began to see Lucas not just as a rogue or a treasure hunter, but as an ally she could trust. And Lucas, watching her courage in the face of danger, found himself respecting her more than he cared to admit. The Highlands whispered their approval as the duo prepared to leave. The fragment secured, and their bond strengthened. Their next destination awaited, and with it, the promise of new trials and new secrets. Chapter 5: Across the Oceans. The sun blazed brightly above the dense jungle as Amelia and Lucas arrived at their next destination, the heart of a forgotten Mayan city, hidden deep within the Yucatan Peninsula. Towering trees stretched toward the sky, their roots clawing through the remnants of stone pyramids and ceremonial platforms. Vines cascaded over ancient carvings, nature reclaiming its dominion over what had once been a thriving civilization. "This place feels alive," Lucas muttered, his voice subdued as he took in the vibrant greens and the cacophony of birds and insects. "It's like the jungle is watching us." "It's incredible," Amelia said, her eyes wide with wonder as she studied the intricate glyphs on a nearby wall. "These ruins hold centuries of history, Lucas. Imagine the stories they could tell." "I'd rather not imagine the ones about explorers who didn't make it back," Lucas quipped, though his tone lacked its usual levity. The weight of the place pressed on both of them, a reminder of the significance of their quest. The manuscript had led them here, to a temple buried beneath layers of jungle growth. According to Amelia's research, the third fragment of the Chronomancer's compass was hidden inside, guarded by traps and puzzles designed to deter thieves. But they weren't alone in their search. Nathaniel Drake, a wealthy and ruthless collector, had set his sights on the compass. Unlike Amelia and Lucas, who sought to protect the artifact, Drake was motivated by greed and ambition. His vast resources and obsession with the compass made him a dangerous adversary, one who would stop at nothing to claim it for himself. As Amelia and Lucas approached the temple's entrance, the oppressive heat of the jungle seemed to intensify. The air was thick with humidity, making every breath a conscious effort. Lucas scanned the area, his instincts honed from years of danger. "Drake's men could be anywhere," he said, his voice low. "We need to move carefully." Amelia nodded, clutching her satchel tightly. Inside were the notes and tools she would need to decode the temple's secrets. Together, they stepped into the shadowy interior, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The first chamber was vast, its walls adorned with carvings that told stories of the Mayan gods and their connection to the stars. Amelia marveled at the artistry, her fingers tracing the delicate lines of a celestial map etched into the stone. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The map points to the location of the fragment." Lucas stepped beside her, studying the symbols. "Looks straightforward enough. What's the catch?" Amelia glanced at him, her expression serious. "The Mayans were master engineers, Lucas. The catch is that this place is likely filled with traps." As if on cue, the ground beneath them shifted slightly, a faint click echoing through the chamber. Lucas's eyes widened as he grabbed Amelia, pulling her back just as a series of spears shot from the walls, narrowly missing them. "Thanks for the warning," Lucas said dryly, releasing her arm once the danger had passed. "I did warn you," Amelia replied, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Navigating the temple required both ingenuity and nerve. Each step was a test of their resolve, with pressure plates, hidden darts, and collapsing floors threatening their progress. Amelia's keen intellect and Lucas's quick reflexes proved invaluable as they worked together to overcome each obstacle. At last, they reached the inner sanctum, a chamber bathed in dappled sunlight that filtered through cracks in the ceiling. In the center of the room stood an ornate altar, and atop it rested the third fragment of the compass. Its metallic surface gleamed, the intricate engravings catching the light. Amelia approached cautiously, her heart pounding with anticipation, but as her fingers closed around the fragment, a voice cut through the stillness. "Step away from the altar." Nathaniel Drake emerged from the shadows, flanked by two armed men. His tailored suit was immaculate despite the jungle's harsh conditions, and his sharp features radiated a smug confidence. "Drake," Lucas growled, positioning himself between Amelia and the collector. "Didn't take you long to catch up." Drake's gaze flicked to Lucas, his smile predatory. "I've always been one step ahead, Blackwood. You should know that by now." Amelia tightened her grip on the fragment, her mind racing. She could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken threat that hung between them. "You can't take this," she said, her voice firm. "The compass isn't a trophy for your collection. It's a safeguard against catastrophe." Drake chuckled, a cold, hollow sound. "Spare me the sanctimonious lecture. The compass belongs to whoever is strong enough to claim it. And that, dear doctor, is me." Lucas's hand hovered near his knife, his muscles coiled like a spring. "You might want to rethink that," he said, his voice low. "You're outnumbered." Drake's smirk widened. "Am I?" At his signal, more men stepped into the chamber, their weapons trained on Amelia and Lucas. The odds had shifted, but Amelia refused to back down. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," she said, her voice steady despite the danger. "The compass isn't just a relic. It's connected to forces beyond your control." "Then perhaps it's time to learn," Drake replied, motioning for his men to seize them. Before they could act, Lucas hurled a smoke bomb he had hidden in his jacket. The chamber filled with a thick, choking fog, obscuring everything in sight. Grabbing Amelia's hand, he pulled her toward the nearest exit, the fragment clutched tightly in her other hand. They ran blindly through the temple, the sound of shouts and gunfire echoing behind them. Lucas led the way, his instincts guiding them through the maze of corridors until they finally burst into the open air. The jungle greeted them with its chaotic symphony, the sunlight blinding after the dimness of the temple. They didn't stop running until they reached a narrow river, where a small boat awaited, hidden among the reeds. Lucas helped Amelia into the boat before untying it from the shore. "We'll need to lay low for a while," he said, pushing off and letting the current carry them downstream. Amelia held the fragment close, her heart still racing. "Drake won't stop," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "He'll come after us." "Let him," Lucas replied, his tone hard. "We've got something he doesn't, the truth." As the jungle closed in around them, Amelia and Lucas knew their journey was far from over. The third fragment was theirs, but the stakes were higher than ever. With Drake on their heels and the Eclipse drawing closer, the race to complete the Chronomancer's compass had never felt more urgent. Chapter 6. Trials of Trust. The relentless sun of the Egyptian desert bore down on Amelia and Lucas as they trekked across the vast expanse of sand. Each step sank slightly into the ground, the dunes shifting and whispering beneath their boots. Overhead, the sky was an unbroken stretch of brilliant blue, the horizon shimmering with heat. Amelia wiped her brow and adjusted her scarf to shield her face from the biting wind. "This is it," she said, consulting the manuscript. "The Valley of Forgotten Pharaohs. If the notes are correct, the next fragment is buried in the crypt of an unrecorded ruler." Lucas shaded his eyes with one hand, scanning the area. "Hidden pharaohs and buried treasure? You sure this isn't just a legend?" Amelia shot him a look. "You've seen the fragments yourself, Lucas. This isn't the time for doubt." "Fair point," he replied with a shrug. "Still, these legends tend to come with more than a few curses." Amelia rolled her eyes but didn't reply. The tension between them had been simmering since their escape from the Mayan temple. Though they had worked seamlessly as a team, the pressure of the journey and the looming threat of Nathaniel Drake had begun to weigh heavily on both of them. By late afternoon, they reached the entrance to an unmarked tomb carved into the base of a sandstone cliff. The air inside was cool and heavy, carrying the faint scent of decay and dust. Lucas lit a torch, its flickering light casting eerie shadows on the walls adorned with faded hieroglyphs. "This must be it," Amelia murmured, running her fingers over the inscriptions. "The burial site of Sekhem Tut, a pharaoh who was erased from history after challenging the gods," Lucas echoed, his voice bouncing off the stone walls. "Sounds like someone you don't want to mess with." Amelia ignored the comment, her attention focused on a mural depicting Sekhem Tut holding a gleaming artifact, the fragment of the compass. Below it, a riddle was etched into the stone. "To awaken the path, you must balance the scales of the gods," she read aloud. Lucas frowned. "Sounds like a puzzle. Let's hope it's not the deadly kind." The center of the chamber featured a large scale balanced on a stone pedestal. Nearby lay various objects: gold coins, stones, feathers, and a small jar of sand. Amelia knelt to examine the inscriptions on the pedestal, her mind racing. The ancient Egyptians believed the heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and balance, she said. "We need to replicate that balance." Lucas crouched beside her, examining the items. "So we just guess what goes on each side?" "It's not guessing," Amelia replied sharply. "It's a matter of interpreting the symbols and weights. These objects represent virtues and sins. We have to balance them correctly to proceed." They worked together, placing objects on the scales and carefully adjusting the weights. Each movement was deliberate, the tension in the air palpable. A single mistake could trigger a trap, and both of them knew it. When the scales finally balanced, a low rumble shook the chamber. A section of the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow passageway that led deeper into the tomb. "Not bad, Professor," Lucas said with a grin, gesturing for her to lead the way. The passage opened into a grand burial chamber. At its center lay a sarcophagus, its lid adorned with the image of Sekhem Tut. Behind it, resting on an ornate pedestal, was the fourth fragment of the compass. Its metallic surface glowed faintly, casting an otherworldly light on the chamber walls. Amelia stepped forward, her breath hitching. She reached for the fragment, her fingers trembling slightly as they closed around the cool metal. But before she could turn back to Lucas, a sharp clattering noise echoed through the chamber. Lucas cursed under his breath as the floor beneath them began to shift. Panels fell away, revealing a network of spikes and chasms below. Amelia stumbled, clutching the fragment tightly as Lucas grabbed her arm, steadying her. "Time to go," he shouted, pulling her toward the passageway. They ran, the ground crumbling behind them as the tomb's defenses activated. The narrow corridors seemed to close in around them, the air growing thick with dust and heat. By the time they reached the entrance, both of them were gasping for breath, their clothes covered in dirt and sweat. As they collapsed onto the sand outside, Amelia clutched the fragment to her chest, her heart still racing. "That was too close," she said, her voice trembling. Lucas leaned back on his elbows, his chest rising and falling rapidly. "You think?" For a moment they sat in silence, the vast desert stretching out before them. The danger had passed, but the weight of their journey remained. Amelia turned to Lucas, her expression softening. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving me back there." Lucas shrugged, though there was a flicker of emotion in his eyes. "We're in this together, Amelia. I've got your back." The moment hung between them, unspoken feelings threatening to surface. But before either could say more, a faint noise reached their ears, the distant hum of an engine. Both of them stiffened, their instincts kicking in. "Drake," Lucas muttered, scrambling to his feet. "We need to move." Amelia nodded, slipping the fragment into her satchel. The cryptic past of Secum Tut had tested their resolve, but the real trial lay ahead. With 4 fragments in their possession and Drake closing in, the stakes had never been higher. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, Amelia and Lucas set off toward their next destination. Their bond, forged in the fires of danger and trust, was growing stronger. But with the eclipse drawing nearer, they both knew time was running out. Chapter 7, The Final Countdown. The cliffs of Ireland loomed ahead, jagged and majestic, battered by the ceaseless waves of the Atlantic Ocean. The air was charged with an electric anticipation, the kind that heralded a storm, or something far greater. The final piece of the Chronomancer's compass awaited here, hidden in the craggy embrace of the ancient land. Amelia and Lucas trudged up the winding path leading to the summit, their every step weighed down by exhaustion and the knowledge of how close they were to completing their quest. The fragments they had collected so far felt heavier in Amelia's satchel, as if they carried the weight of the world. "You sure this is the spot?" Lucas asked, glancing at the darkening sky. The first tendrils of the solar eclipse were beginning to creep across the horizon, casting an eerie half-light over the landscape. Amelia nodded, consulting the manuscript one last time. "The final clue is tied to the alignment of the sun and moon. The eclipse will reveal the location of the last fragment. We just have to be ready." Lucas frowned, scanning the cliffs. "Ready for what? Another set of traps? Or Drake and his goons?" "Probably both," Amelia said, her voice steady despite the tension simmering between them. "But we've come too far to let anything stop us now." They reached the top of the cliffs just as the sun began to wane, the moon slowly overtaking it in a celestial dance. Amelia laid out the fragments they had collected, arranging them on a flat stone table etched with ancient Celtic symbols. Each piece seemed to hum with a faint energy, as though they were responding to the cosmic event. "This is it," she murmured, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to align the fragments. "When the eclipse reaches its peak, the final piece will reveal itself." Lucas stood guard, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The wind howled around them, carrying the faint scent of salt and rain. Every instinct in his body screamed that they weren't alone. His fears were confirmed moments later when a low, mocking voice cut through the wind. Well, I must say, you've done most of the hard work for me." Nathaniel Drake stepped into view, flanked by 6 armed men. His tailored coat billowed in the wind, and his face was alight with smug satisfaction. "Drake," Lucas growled, his hand moving instinctively to his knife. "I was hoping you'd stay lost in the desert." Drake chuckled, his gaze fixed on the fragments. "You underestimate me, Blackwood. I've always known how to find what I want, and what I want," he said, gesturing to the table, "is the Chronomancer's compass." "You don't know what you're dealing with," Amelia said, stepping protectively in front of the fragments. "This isn't just a relic. If misused, it could destabilize the balance of time and nature." Drake's smile widened. "Spare me the melodrama, Doctor. Balance is for the weak." The compass is a tool, one that will place the world at my feet. The standoff crackled with tension, the howling wind and crashing waves underscoring the gravity of the moment. Lucas stepped closer to Amelia, his voice low. Got a plan? Keep him talking, she whispered, her fingers inching toward the fragments. I'll handle the alignment. Lucas nodded, stepping forward with deliberate confidence. You've got it all wrong, Drake. The compass isn't a weapon, it's a responsibility, one you're not worthy of. Drake raised an eyebrow, amused. And you are? I'm not the one who needs to be worthy, Lucas shot back. Amelia is. She's the only one who can complete this. Amelia's heart pounded as she worked quickly but carefully, fitting the fragments together in the precise order described in the manuscript. The compass began to glow, its intricate engravings coming to life with a golden light that seemed to defy the encroaching darkness. The eclipse reached its zenith. The world plunged into a surreal twilight. The air vibrated with an unearthly energy as the final piece of the compass materialized before their eyes, floating above the stone table. Amelia reached for it, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. But before she could grasp it, Drake barked an order and his men raised their weapons. Lucas reacted instantly, throwing himself at the nearest guard. The cliffside erupted into chaos, the clash of bodies and the roar of the wind, creating a maelstrom of sound and fury. Amelia seized the final piece of the compass, its energy surging through her like a tidal wave. The fragments resonated as they fused together, the completed artifact glowing with an intensity that made her shield her eyes. Amelia, now! Lucas shouted, grappling with one of Drake's men. Summoning every ounce of courage, Amelia activated the compass. The artifact pulsed, sending out a shock wave that knocked everyone to the ground. The wind stilled, and an unnatural silence fell over the cliffs. Nathaniel Drake struggled to his feet, his expression twisted with rage and desperation. You don't understand what you've done, he snarled, lunging toward the compass. Before he could reach it, the artifact emitted a final burst of light, engulfing him in its glow. When the light faded, Drake was gone, his men scattering in panic. Amelia and Lucas stared at the compass, its glow softening to a steady pulse. The air around them felt lighter, as if the balance of the world had been restored. It's, Amelia said, her voice trembling with relief. Lucas stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did it, Amelia. The compass is whole. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the fading eclipse, they stood together on the cliffs, their silhouettes outlined against the dawn. The journey had tested them in ways they could never have imagined, but they had prevailed, together. Epilogue, the dawn of new futures. The quiet hum of the Chronomancer's compass filled the air as Amelia carefully placed it into a reinforced glass case within the library's hidden archive. The glow of the artifact dimmed, settling into a faint pulse, as if acknowledging that its purpose had been fulfilled. The case was engraved with a simple plaque, for the balance of time and nature. Lucas leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her work. You really think locking it up here will keep it safe? Amelia turned, her expression thoughtful. The library is more than just a repository of knowledge. It's a sanctuary. The compass belongs here, among the echoes of history. Besides, she added with a wry smile, there are protections in place, ones even you would struggle to bypass. Lucas chuckled, stepping into the room. I'll take that as a compliment. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their journey settling between them. The artifacts they had unearthed, the dangers they had faced, the people they had become, it all felt monumental, yet strangely fleeting, like a dream that lingers just out of reach. Do you think Drake survived? Lucas asked finally, his voice unusually subdued. Amelia hesitated. The compass doesn't destroy, it restores balance. Wherever it sent him, it was a result of his own choices. I suppose that's the truest form of justice. Lucas nodded, though the uncertainty lingered in his eyes. And what about us? What happens now? Amelia tilted her head, studying him. The rogue treasure hunter who had once been a stranger, an enigma, was now someone she trusted implicitly, someone she had come to rely on. That depends, she said, her tone light. Are you planning on disappearing into the shadows again? Lucas grinned, though there was a softness in his expression. Not this time. I think I've had enough of running solo. Besides, he added, gesturing to the library around them, Someone needs to make sure you don't get yourself into more trouble." Amelia laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. "You mean you're sticking around?" "Looks like it," Lucas said, his grin widening. "Someone's got to keep the dragon from hoarding all the history." Their banter felt easy, natural, yet it carried an unspoken promise. Their partnership, forged in the crucible of danger, was far from over. The world was vast, filled with mysteries yet to be uncovered, and together they were more than ready to face them. As they stepped out into the brisk London morning, the city buzzed with its usual rhythm of life, oblivious to the cosmic calamity that had nearly unfolded. Amelia and Lucas walked side by side, their paths now intertwined by choice rather than necessity. "I've got a lead on something in Peru," Lucas said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Ancient relic, undiscovered tomb. You know, the usual." Amelia raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And you're telling me this because?" "Because," Lucas said with a mischievous glint in his eye, "I figured you'd want to come along." Amelia smiled, her heart light despite the weight of the past few weeks. "I suppose I could be convinced." The two of them disappeared into the crowd, their laughter mingling with the sounds of the city. The Chronomancer's compass, now whole and dormant, rested safely in its case, a testament to the power of history and to the courage of those who protect it. As the day unfolded, the world moved forward, unaware of the balance that had been restored. But for Amelia Trent and Lucas Blackwood, it was the beginning of a new adventure, one where the past, present, and future danced in perfect harmony, guided by the unbreakable bond they had forged. The end.